Sorry, I spewed up on readings again. This is a next reading video I am going to be doing. This time, this is Iguana Island from Zaleros, and I remember that it's in Schoolbo, so I found this image on Google, so this is explosive. So let's read this book in funny contented stuff. The Zaleros have been eagerly awaiting Pirate Day at the Bow City Museum. They had each dressed up in pirate outfits and have been working on the best pirate accents. As the Zaleros entered the museum, they saw Xena waving to them to come quickly. I'm glad you're here as we actually find a real pirate mystery to solve, said Xena, who was carrying an old leather book, tied shut with a worn piece of string. That looks like an iguana, Ace remarked, pointing to the creature carved in the book's front cover. Aren't they super cool lizards who live in tropical areas? Yes, and did you know they have a third eye in the middle of their heads? Asked Professor Bard as they entered the room. Awesome! If we have 3 eyes, we can use 2 for homework and 1 for TV at the same time, enthused Lottie. What do iguanas have to do with the treasure mystery? Asked Imali. Xena smiled and untied the string that bound the book shut. The pages flapped open, revealing small, swirly handwriting and a detailed ink drawing of a sailing ship. A flag bearing the skull and crossbones flew for the ship's mast. Molly's eyes widened as she stared at the drawing. Is that a real pirate ship? It was, answered Xena. This is a journal written by Crimson Charlie, captain of the pirate ship Storm Raider. Captain Crimson Charlie was sailing Storm Raider across the Caribbean islands 200 years ago with the crew of real-life pirates. Did they find any treasure? Asked Molly. Oscar dived headfirst into his backpack and re-emerged holding a magnifying glass. Let's find out, he said, and began to read aloud from Captain Charlie's journal. September 1799. I have not written for a few days as we have difficult weather. You would think after 2 years patrolling this island, we would have become experts at traversing the whirlpool and the storm. Apparently not. 2 years. I sometimes can't believe it hasn't been that long. I have expected the crew would have much to eat by now. There are pirates after all. Iguana Island has a hold over us all. We know that we must protect it no matter what. Plus, Dirty Dan is a great cook, and Noah could swap his meals for a month of free dinners at the best taverns in England or the New World. Dirty Dan's fish pie is even better than my grandmother's, and she won first prize at the Cornwall County Fair Pie competition 5 years running. I must go for now. They are decks to be scrubbed and sails to maintain. CC. Oscar looked up from the journal and into the faces of the other Zaleros. They were also wondering about the same things. What was so special about Iguana Island? Why had Chris and Charlie and the pirates on board Storm Raider been protecting it all that time? How long did they end up doing it for? Was the island where they kept their treasure? Asked Molly, breaking the silence. Xena and I have some theories but is unclear for the journal what exactly is on the island, answered Professor Bard. Maybe a real rare colony of iguanas, suggested Ace. Maybe there were conservation pirates sailing the seas to protect the environment. Recycle your garbage or you'll walk the plank, snarled Lottie in her best pirate voice. Professor Bard and Isha laughed until their faces turned bright pink. It was like that when it came to the museum, Xena replied. We were lucky to get the journal at all. There is stiff competition from private collectors for pirate records. Some people will do anything to uncover long-forgotten treasure. I have examined the journal in every way imaginable, but it isn't clear what happened to Crimson Charlie. We are at a standstill, and we have so many unanswered questions. If the island remains a source of power, it could have been dangerous to disturb, said Professor Bard. The island is a ticking time bomb. If someone has stolen the missing pages of the journal, that time bomb could go off any minute, added Ace. The professor and Xena nodded gravely. What makes this most urgent is that last night Xena detected an unauthorized book speeding towards Iguana Island. The satellite images were unclear, so we are not sure who the boat belongs to, and what even more alarming is that on the boat appears to have a time machine on board, explained Professor Bard. So whoever it is probably knows the secret of Iguana Island and is trying to go back in time to steal the treasure. Amali began. Well, I think we better go and get some answers straight away. Captain Charlie will probably need some help. The Zaleros race to link arms. 4 points of the Earth, Moon and Sun, unite together and become as one. And it's off to Captain Charlie on Iguana Island we go! Professor Bard and Xena know this is a dangerous mission, and they had not even had a chance to tell their friends to be careful. Splash! The Zaleros plunged into the ocean. As they rose to the surface, waves crashed over them, pushing them back underwater. They bobbed up again, ice-stinging, spluttering mouthfuls of salty seawater. Somehow we missed the island, said Isha, pointing to the distance. It's over that way. We didn't miss it. Something was blocking us. Didn't you feel it? It was like smacking into a rubber wool before we flung into the sea, said Amali as she tried to tread water in an attempt to stay on top of the constant waves. Everyone nodded, all except Oscar, who was busy blowing up a small inflatable wrap from his backpack. It was too tight to squeeze for them to fit on board, so Ace hauled Zora on top while the others clung onto the sides, panning. The Zaleros decided to try and paddle their way toward the island. They kicked their legs and the raft began to move slowly forward. As they kicked, the raft bobbed up and down over the relentless waves. Up and down, up and down, up and down. I'm getting a bit seasick, said Rue, gritting his teeth together. Lottie pulled herself on top of the raft alongside Zorro and piled some soggy, salty gum into her mouth. She blew a beautiful pink bubblegum balloon that she attached to the rat with a piece of rope from Oscar's backpack. Soon the wind and the balloon were propelling the raft. Forget horsepower. This raft has gumball power, giggled Lottie. We'll reach Iguana Island in no time. She began to shout words of encouragement to her friends, when suddenly, smack! They collided with the invisible barricade again. The raft spun around and around, hurtling away from the island with the Zaleros desperately clinging on, screaming. This is a terrifying real-life carnival ride. Slowly the spinning came to an end, and the Zaleros were left grasping the raft while it resumed itself a down path over the never-ending waves. Lottie looked around at the white knuckles and the pale faces of their friends, giggling gumballs. Do you think maybe we should try the ghost train right next to the Ferris wheel? I don't know about all of you, but I would like some fairy floss. Everyone smiled and began to laugh. What would we do without you, Lottie? Joked Ace. You always know the right thing just to say. I don't know about that, Lottie replied, but I do have a good question. What in the actual world happened back there? My guess is that something or someone is stopping us from reaching the island, answered Ace. As he spoke, a shadow began to spread across the ocean, as through a cloud had covered the sun. Moving at great speed toward the Zaleros was a huge pirate ship. Its wooden hull was painted red and black. Its wind-filled sails bore the icon of the iguana surrounded by the tornado, the same icon they had seen on the cover of the battered journal back at the museum. The ship cut through the waves like a knife through melted chocolate. The Zaleros stared up at the ship. Black and white flags bearing the skull and crossbones flapped in the wind. The Zaleros waved to the pirate ship, trying to let them know they were friendly, but they also were cannons pointed directly toward them. Two thoughts had just occurred to me, Rue began. My first thought is, wow, a real pirate ship. That is so cool. My second thought is, do you know if these are typical pirates, you know mean nasty and dangerous? I think we're about to find out, replied Ace. The ship loomed up beside the Zaleros on their raft. A rope ladder was flung over the side toward them. Figuring what they would have no choice but to climb aboard, Ace ordered Zora to shrink, placed him into his pocket, and began to climb. The others followed, not knowing what they would face when they reached the top. As he climbed, Ace could smell seawater, fish, and old rope. His nose told him that these pirates did not take baths very often. But he could also smell something strange. It smelled like his dad's homemade apple crumble. The seawater must have messed with my nose, he thought to himself. As Ace pulled himself to the top of the ladder and over the edge of the ship, a pair of hands grabbed him and began rifling through his pockets. Hand over your weapons, a gravely voice demanded. We are all unarmed, Ace replied, holding his hands up. He glanced around the deck and gulped. He looked tough. Scarves tied around his head, swords drawn, some with toothless grins. Maybe they were snarling, it was hard to tell. The pirate with the gravely voice began searching for weapons that were hidden. There was a sudden bark from Ace's top pocket, and the pirate shrieked and jumped back, grasping his finger. Seize him! He's booby-trapped his pocket! It bit me! Screamed the pirate. All the Zaleros had now reached the top of the rope ladder and had one by one been dragged onto the deck. He stuck together, arms raised above their heads. There was no booby trapped and no weapon. It's just my dog. You scared him. Ace put his hand into his pocket. All the pirates glared at him, their swords raised ready to attack. Ace pulled out Zora, who grew to the normal size without command, out in sheer fright. He barked and stood protectively in front of the Zaleros. Amazing, came a calm voice in the shadows. A group of magic makers appear from nowhere in the middle of the ocean, but this is your ocean, and your devilry is not welcome here. State your purpose immediately, or I'll crew to attack. I'll order my crew to attack. The Zaleros gasped as the captain of the Storm Raider appeared, not much taller than Ace, dressed head from to toe in shiny black with flaming red hair. Standing before them was Captain Crimson Charlie. You're a girl, blurted Amali. That's so cool. It took me weeks to convince the boys that the girl could be a magic captain. Your magic obviously does not stretch to your powers of observation, replied Captain Charlie. Even One-Eyed Pete over there, I can see I'm a girl, and his one remaining eye is made of wood. I promise you, being a girl is the least of my skills. In an instant, she sprung across the deck and was pointing towards Amali. Two of the pirate crew looked down with their empty hands in some confusion. Oh, that was good, Molly replied before performing a jaw-dropping series of acrobatics which ended with her holding the swords. But we don't need these, she said, throwing the swords overboard. We came all this way to meet you. We have so many questions. You use magic to sneak aboard my ship, steal from me, and then pretend I have appeared from nowhere to ask me about being a girl pirate. How silly do you think I am? Yelled Captain Charlie. We don't think you're silly at all. That's why we're here, said Lottie, trying to calm the situation down. But there certainly has been some sort of mix-up. You see, we read your journal in a museum and traveled back in time to meet you. Time travel, Captain Charlie said slowly. There was a time when I would have thrown you overboard simply for suggesting such nonsense. But since we came to the island, I'm inclined to believe such things are possible. Who are you? We're the Zaleros. I'm Lottie, she answered. Before I ran away from home, I was Lady Cat Charlotte Clearwater, said the captain. Now it's Captain Crimson Charlie. Welcome aboard the Storm Raider. Does anyone in the future have wheelie shoes? I could see that it would be quite useful and fun, said Captain Charlie, admiring Lottie's rollerblades. They could if they want to, Lottie replied. Would you like a turn? Captain Charlie was soon skating around the deck at great speed. The Zolaris were now seated happily on comfy cushions with large bowls of Dirty Dan's custard apple crumble. Captain, you mentioned something that was stolen. Is there something we can help you with? We are pretty good at solving mysteries, offered Rue. Captain Charlie skated towards her cabin and gestured for the Zolaris to follow her. She reached out under the mattress of her narrow bed and pulled up a leather journal. An iguana wrapped in a tornado was emblazoned on the cover. It was the journal the Zolaris had read from them at the museum. We sailed about a port 3 years ago, the captain began. I had heard great stories of great treasures hidden in the Caribbean islands. We searched for months, but found nothing. Then one night, a huge storm came over the horizon. The sails tore. We all thought we were done for. But miraculously, when the sun rose, we were somehow still afloat. I was thankful the ship lived up to his name. Storm Raider. We had no idea where we were, but before us lay a beautiful bay and island. And an island. That island. Captain Charlie pointed across the waves to the island the Zolaris had tried to reach earlier that morning. So, it doesn't actually have any iguanas? Asked Ace. Yes, answered Captain Charlie. And treasure. Iguana Island is a beautiful tropical paradise, the captain continued. Colorful birds, delicious fruit, crystal clear lakes, and a whole colony of iguanas. In the middle of the island stands a stone temple built centuries ago. The walls have a script we cannot decode. Inside the temple is a turquoise diamond with immense power. As soon as we sold the diamond, we knew it would never be disturbed. We returned straight to our ship to sail away and that is when the island chose us. Chose you, asked Rue, as the island's protector. We have to sail the hidden whirlpool that surrounds the island and guard it from invaders who would take its riches for itself. The morning after each full moon, the whirlpool speeds up, cloaking the island in a tornado of water. Then we are released to sail the bay and to collect fresh supplies. After that, we return to our post. Amali asked the questions and they were all thinking, how long do you have to do this and you will ever get back home? Captain Charlie looked at her feet, her cheeks flushed pink. I don't think we'll be here after this day is finished, but I also don't think we will ever make it home. Captain, what was stolen from your ship? Rue asked again. Captain Charlie opened the journal to reveal the missing pages the Zolaris had noticed in the museum. I love to draw, she said quietly. I should never have done it. But I drew a detailed map of Iguana Island and I recorded details of our time there. Last night the pages were taken. I assumed it was you, but it seems someone else is here first. Someone who would cause untold damage to Iguana Island. Captain Charlie explained that the whirlpool was due to rise to full height in a few hours, protecting the island. The other defenses, like the invisible shield that had blocked the Zolaris earlier that day, would be lowered. The pirates could land at the island after midday, but so could anyone else inside the whirlpool. Whoever had stolen the map would have their chance. Do you think they're after the treasure? Asked Amali. Of course they are. Some people would stop at nothing to get their hands on the largest turquoise diamond in the world, replied the captain. They must be in a boat somewhere nearby, suggested Oscar. We had searched for hours. Whoever has magic and can hide it in plain sight, said Captain Charlie, looking sadly out to sea. We will do everything we can help you protect the island, said Ace eagerly. At midday, the Zolaris and Captain Charlie climbed into a small rowboat and watched as the huge walls of water rose high in the air, swirling around them at great speed. It was like being inside the eye of a damp, salty tornado. When they reached Iguana Island, Isha jumped out and began scanning the sand in the bright sunlight. Footprints, she whispered. She turned and looked out into the water. Captain, you wouldn't find a boat because the thief was in a submarine. What sort of magic is that? Asked Captain Charlie. The Zolaris thought about how they might explain that particular technological development while they followed Isha up the beach to the edge of the jungle. Ace sniffed the air and asked, "So, who do we know who wears too much perfume and would do anything to get her hands on a huge diamond?" "Countess Lucille." The Zolaris groaned in unison. The Zolaris knew that Countess Lucille The Zolaris knew that Countess Lucille would stop at nothing to make her diamond hers. They were silent as they made their way through the jungle toward the temple. Suddenly, Zora barked and darted into the trees. Ace followed closely behind. The pair emerged a few moments later with Ace, holding a huge bright blue and yellow parrot. Its wing has a painfully bent out of place. Squawked. These birds love meeting new people, but I think this poor guy was unlucky enough to get too close to Countess Lucille. "It looks like she flicked him into the trees," said Ace as he carefully applied some ointment and a bandage to the damaged wing of the colorful bird. "How could you know that nasty animal-hating treasure hunter would not want to make friends with you?" Ace said gently, stroking the parrot's feathers and placing him on the branch of a nearby tree. The path through the jungle would have been beautiful if the Zolaris had been on holiday rather than a dangerous and urgent mission. They could see flashes of color as birds flew through the trees, blooming tropical flowers and delicious fruit ready to be picked, and there were the iguanas. Ace wished more than anything that they had been here with time to study the iguanas. He cursed Countess Lucille under his breath as he walked, still furious about the damage she had inflicted upon the beautiful parrot that Zora had found. Lottie skated ahead, Amali ran behind her. While the others reached the temple, Lottie and Amali were peering up at the complex symbols carved into the stone arc around the doorway. Rue clapped his hands together and said, "Let's get decoding." "You can read that," said Captain Charlie, shaking her head. "Is there anything you cannot do? Travel through time, see in the dark, run and skate at lightning speed, hear and smell things that appeared to not be there, perform incredible acrobatics, and now read ancient scripts." "We can't do all of these things," said Isha kindly. "That's why we have each other. It's team effort." "The other thing we can do is to have fun and catch baddies," added Lottie. "Preferably both at once." Rue began to read slowly, running his fingers across the carvings as he spoke. "A third eye allows you to see beyond sight while the island holds power over water, wind, and light. Protect the jewel from friend or foe who would become thief, or the island will fall and the world will feel grief." Rue looked up suddenly. "According to these carvings, that diamond is a source of great power. Without it, the island would collapse in the sea, pulling everything into it as it sinks." "So, like a black hole in outer space?" asked Oscar. Rue nodded. "I can't be sure, but the people who built this temple believed that the diamond is stolen. This whirlpool would grow and grow, swallowing up most of the earth. The power of the diamond drew your ship towards it with the storm. But when you and your crew found the temple and chose not to steal the treasure, the island rewarded you by making you its protector. I would think you'd be crazy. I would think you were crazy if I had not felt the power of it silently singing to me all the time," said Captain Charlie, her red hair glowing in the moonlight. "Oh, you can't possibly believe that rubbish," said a familiar voice out of the jungle. "Thanks for decoding, by the way. I suppose you children are useful occasionally." Countess Lucille appeared from the trees holding a diamond-encrusted laser gun. Perched on her shoulder was a pet iguana wearing a sparkly silver collar and carrying the missing pages from Captain Charlie's journal in its mouth. "And now for the main event. The red-headed pirate girl will come with me to steal the diamond. I don't like getting my hands dirty, you see. Then Iggy and I will leave this bug-infested island and head straight to Paris for some serious shopping. Iggy has not liked meeting his ancestors. They teased him about his weight. You'll all stay behind, of course." That way, if the island does fall into the sea, you won't be able to follow me. A perfect plan. Countess Lucille, don't you ever stop to think why your perfect plans are never successful? Lottie frankly asked. The gleeful smile disappeared from Countess Lucille's face, instantly replaced by a stony glare. She dumped Iggy on the ground with the sun, and fired her laser gun in the air for good measure. If you think that 6 snotty-nosed brats, a mangy dog, and a pathetic excuse for a pirate who can't even bring herself to steal treasure are going to stop me, Countess Lucille, you are very much mistaken. You may have been lucky before, but this time you will be the ones left behind a sinking island in the middle of the ocean at the dawn of the 19th century. Well, I will have this priceless diamond to fund a giant shopping spree, selecting from the finest fashion time and space can offer me. Start moving, pirate girl, Countess Lucille snarled. Captain Charlie glared back. What makes you think I would risk the safety of myself, my friends, my crew, my ship, this island, and the entire Earth so that you could go shopping? This is not some pirate toy I am pointing at you. It's a supersonic laser. It can turn you into dust before you can say, shiver me timbers. Does that change your mind? Smiled Countess Lucille. Captain Charlie glanced at the Zaleros. I think you should go with her, suggested Ace. Captain Charlie lowered her head, turned, and began to walk through the stone doorway in the darkened temple. Thought you might, said Countess Lucille, her shrill laughter causing several parrots to take flight from a nearby tree. This laser can work across long distance, so no circus tricks out there, she yelled over her shoulder as she followed Captain Charlie into the temple. The Zaleros sprung into action. Amali somersaulted up the slope walls of the temple, with Lottie skating behind her. Lottie blew a bubble, and the pair slowly floated down through a small opening in the temple roof. Isha, Rue, Oscar, Ace, and Zorro crept through the main entrance. The Countess had her back to them, but they could see Captain Charlie standing defiantly, refusing to remove the huge turquoise diamond from its cradle on the temple floor. Lottie and Amali drifted silently down toward them. I will count to 3, and then either you hand me that diamond or I'll turn you to dust, Countess Lucille snarled. Captain Charlie slowly bent toward the diamond as it prepared to lift it from its resting place. 1, 2, 3, yelled Captain Charlie, who backflipped out of the way as the Countess fired her laser. The beam her laser deflected off the diamond and go onto Lottie's giant bubble, causing it to burst and go all over the Countess. Lottie and Amali then, from the air, landing on Countess Lucille, who is now completely stuck to the ground. Sora raced over and began licking her mercilessly. Get that flea bag off of me! The Countess shrieked. Back on Storm Raider, and with the captain's missing journal pages returned, the Zaleros said their goodbyes. Will you keep patrolling the island? Asked Lottie. I don't think we'll be able to with her on board. I'm guessing the whirlpool will release us, and we can sail home. At least we'll have someone to scrub the decks. Captain Crimson Charlie smiled at the sticky Countess Lucille. What in the actual word? She's sticky. In the actual world. Q's mouth is close up.